Revelation chapter 2, verses 8 to 17. The function of the state. The cities and churches of Revelation chapters 2 and 3 are alike typical in their significance and are only to be understood in their full scope, not as limited and restricted institutions, and the epistles of Revelation must be comprehended in the same manner. Smyrna, a port city, was 35 miles north of Ephesus. An outstandingly beautiful city, it boasted itself as the glory of Asia. Its straight and wide streets included the famous Golden Street. Smyrna claimed to be Homer's birthplace. A free city and an assize town, Smyrna was important to Rome, even as Rome was important to Smyrna. It was, accordingly, one of the great centres of Caesar worship, which, in Domitian's time, became compulsory throughout the empire, with legal certification of annual homage required of all peoples. In Smyrna, Caesar worship was adapted to serve as the capstone and fulcrum of local life and religion. Adaptation was the essence of the state religion everywhere. The patron goddess of Smyrna was a local variety of Cybele, the great mother deity of the Phrygians, and, among the Romans, the great mother of the gods, or the great Idaean mother of the gods, Magna Deum Mater, Mater Deum Magna Idea. This cult was one of the central foes of Christianity, and long its rival. Cybele was a universal mother of men and gods, and was closely linked with nature, or deistic abandon, and wooded mountains. Her priests were eunuchs called Galloi. They dressed in female garb, and wore their hair long. Attis, or Adonis, was the son and lover of Cybele. His death and rebirth cycle was observed ritually as the winter and springtime, fruition, death, and regeneration of plant life from Mother Earth. Cybele was thus the great Asiatic goddess of fertility. Swine were early associated with her in early Greek and Anatolian cults, and the flesh of swine was not eaten by the people of Pessinus. The cult entered Rome in 204 BC and was credited with helping Rome defeat Hannibal. It was only much later, under Claudius, that the cult, in particular its worship of the sacred tree, was officially and fully incorporated into the established religion of Rome. The human priests of Cybele surrendered their manhood to the divine goddess, nature's principle of fertility, in order to receive back for mankind the fertility of nature. This was, of course, an assertion of the principle of continuity. Nature was in itself barren until impregnated by man's great work and sacrifice and rendered fertile. The Day of Blood, March the 24th, was apparently an annual commemoration and, perhaps, on the part of novices, initiation into the sacrifice. On March the 25th, the revival of nature was observed, the feast of joy, hilaria, and universal license prevailed, all men free to do and act as they pleased. There was very early an attempt to fuse this observance with Easter, which was called by some the Sunday of Joy. The high priest of Cybele, at both Pessinus and Rome, was called Attis. The name Attis pointed not only to the god Attis, or Adonis, but also to Attis, an early king of Lydia, so that Attis was not only the representative of man, who, by his death, released the fertility of nature, but also the representative of the king, so that the focal point of linkage between divinity and humanity may again have been the priestly king. Asia was the primary and strongest area of this faith, although Rome gave itself to the cult extensively. The mother goddess had a very close affinity to statism, and was indeed the religious expression of a political faith to a very great extent. Man, by his political activity, brings out of a barren but potentially great nature all the fruition of the state's power and affects the development of the life and welfare of man. Although the effort and sacrifice is a very real one, the results for man are incalculable. The Day of Blood leads to the Festival of Joy. The emasculation of man is a social salvation of the state. Moreover, the state then tends to become the great mother goddess, and the citizenry, Attis. In Smyrna, in 196 BC, A temple was erected to Dea Roma, the goddess of Rome, and it was the first city to do so, priding itself then and always as a city which both served Rome and received of her bounty, proudly playing the Attis to Rome's Cybele. Smyrna, as a city, had been dead and had been made alive, and, under Rome, had an almost unbroken career of prosperity. Smyrna was thus politically and religiously closely allied to Rome, and was in fact, and in spirit, a centre of emperor worship. Christ, speaking to this church and city, began, "And unto the angel of the church in Smyrna write, These things saith the first and the last, which was dead and is alive." Chapter 2, verse 8. Christ's self-identification is a direct assault on Smyrna. As the first and the last, that is, the totality of all sovereignty, decree and deity. All participation in divinity by other men and gods was immediately eliminated, and both the emperor cult and the Cybele faith denied. Moreover, the vaunted resurrection of Smyrna as a city and the mythological revival of life and fertility celebrated in the Cybele Attis ritual were alike relegated to contempt and outlawed from history by the emphatic assertion that it was he who was dead and came to life again. The preferred translation, according to many, was dead is forceful, meaning became dead or became a corpse. History is here sent bluntly against myth, as it is throughout Scripture. But if the Lord commanded history, why then did Smyrna prosper and the church go in poverty? "I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich." Chapter 2, verse 9. Tribulation is literally pressure and poverty is destitution, so that the difficulty of the church is stated plainly by Christ. They are, nevertheless, rich in that they stand with Christ and in a sure command of history, as against Smyrna's flight from history and reality. The statist faith of Smyrna represented a cosmic monism, a conversion of both nature and the state into a bountiful mother who spared or sought to spare her children from all unpleasantness, whereas God the Father gave his sons in Christ over to the harsh reality of maturation. Theirs was the richness of life, whereas Smyrna had only death with flowers. "I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan." Chapter 2, verse 9. In a masterpiece of fantasy, Riss characterizes this statement as anti-Semitism. In actuality, the Jews of Smyrna not only opposed the church, but also worked with the emperor cult to bring Christians to trial and death. Much later, about AD 60, the Jews took an active part in the martyrdom of Polycarp of Smyrna, even bringing fuel to burn him, even though it was their Sabbath day. This was an especial horror to the Jewish believers, who, like Paul, yearned intensely for the old Israel's salvation. Romans chapter 10, verse 1, "For the ties of blood were strong." Against all this, the Lord stated the harsh reality. The quote-unquote Jews are not the true Jews or Israel of God any longer, but a synagogue or assembly of Satan, the opposer of God. They must be seen historically, not sentimentally or idealistically. The members of this synagogue, instead of being in any kind of relation to God, were in open blasphemy against him through his saints, and hence truly the synagogue of Satan. The Jewish Christians of Smyrna must therefore see their kinsmen after the flesh, not in racial terms, but in religious perspective. "Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life." Revelation chapter 2, verse 10. In the face of the easy life of the unbelievers of Smyrna, Jesus promised the certainty of hardship. It is a perverted and vicious debasement of Christianity, which some preach, promising all kinds of happiness in return for positive thinking, or affirming that Christ will rapture his saints out of tribulation. The pious who testify, "Thank God I'm saved and all my troubles are gone," may well not be saved, and certainly are not honest. Christ promises tribulation trial and testing to his people. It is the dead who have no problems, or the living dead, like the people of Smyrna and Ephesus, adherents of a faith which held castration to be holiness, the diminution of life to be life, and the essence of vice to be virtue. The salvation of Roman and Hellenic religion was a deus ex machina salvation, a miraculous rapturing or delivery out of adversity into a happy and luxurious situation. Biblical salvation, as the Incarnation underscores, is in the context of life, and is not a deliverance out of problems and conflicts, but the promise of strength to battle and to overcome. The promise of tribulation by Jesus Christ is therefore more than a declaration of singular honesty. It is a revelation of the very nature of biblical faith as declared or exegeted by the incarnation and resurrection of Christ, by the totality of his life. The quest for a deus ex machina salvation by Christians is thus a radical error and an offence. The, quote, crown of Smyrna, end quote, was a familiar phrase for the hill called Pagos, with its stately public buildings, and the phrase again suggested a floral or ivy crown or garland, often worn by worshippers of Bacchus and other deities on ritual occasions. Against all this imposing display, Christ offers the true crown, a crown of life, in and through tribulation, not in isolation from it. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. He that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death. Chapter 2, verse 11. The call to suffering, therefore, was not for suffering's sake or in contempt of life. No false sanctification is proffered therein, nor is it asceticism. The open warfare between the two kingdoms or empires involves tribulation, and that tribulation and battle is an essential step to victory. The church in Smyrna was uncompromising in its stand, however much distressed by the hostility of Jewish kinsmen. The church in Pergamos, however, despite some marked strength, was not without compromise. Pergamos, northeast of Ephesus, was a capital city, historically the greatest city of Asia Minor. Its famous library contained over 200,000 books, and the word parchment comes from a Pergame charta. Religiously, it was dedicated to emperor worship, and also took the title Neokoros, temple sweeper to the divine Caesar. It was also prominently devoted to the worship of Dionysius, the bull god, and Asclepios, the god of healing, whose symbol was a serpent. Dionysius, or Bacchus, is best known as the personification of ecstasy and intoxication. According to one form of the myth, Dionysius, or Zagreus, was slain by the Titans when occupying the throne of Zeus, and a ritual of annual revival was a part of the faith. He was a deity of vegetation who also appeared in animal form, bull and goat, doubly connected thereby with agriculture and fertility. However, Dionysius was not merely fertility in the same sense as Cybele, but the ecstasy of fertility and the intoxication thereof. Asclepios, known as Asclepios Soter, Asclepios, the Saviour, was a god of healing, and his emblem was the serpent, often the intertwined serpent. In his temple, tame snakes wandered freely, and the sick, left there overnight, were believed to be healed by the touch of snakes. Thus, the cult of Dionysius offered salvation through escape into ecstasy. Experiential religion and the cult of Asclepius offered a healing cult, while the emperor cult offered man his link to the divine order through the state. The Roman law and peace were the foundation stones of that divine order, and the Caesars the visible manifestation of that order and direction. Valerian, who came to power in 253, proclaimed the nature of that direction on a coin, declaring himself to be restorer of the earth, and his co-emperor and son Galenius inscribed on another coin, Ubique Pax, peace on earth. Roman authority had therefore as its direction, purpose and goal this divine human order, whose foundation was law. The fundamental function of religion was performed by the state, and the subordinate religious functions by the cults. Against this law and authority, the word or law of Christ the King declared his authority. And to the angel of the church in Pergamos write, These things saith he which hath the sharp sword with the two edges. Revelation chapter 2, verse 12. Wherever any state assumes the good life to be its goal, and a messianic order its function rather than simple justice, it must of necessity declare war on the kingdom of God, and in turn be the object of attack by Christians, and this is as true today as in Rome's time. There can be no concession. Christ called such state Satan's seat. Chapter 2, verse 13. Today, as then, much of the church dwells, even where Satan's seat is. Ibid. The modern state assumes, with the consent of compromising and false churches, the role of salvation and religion, and leaves the peripheral comforts and duties of religion to the churches. By and large, the church in Pergamos had stood faithful. It had moved into a direct challenge to the empire. Dwellis, katoiken, implies the establishment of a fixed and permanent residence. The church was claiming the kingdoms of this world for Christ and witnessing faithfully even unto death, as in the case of Antipas. Chapter 2, verse 13. Conflict was inevitable, since Satan dwelleth, katoikai, at the same place, claiming the kingdom for Caesar. But the sword is not in Rome's hand, but in the Lord's, whose very word, chapter 2, verse 16, carries more authority and power than all the might of Rome. If they will not fight for the Lord, they must fight against him. Ibid. The sword he carries, moreover, is a Roman two-edged sword, not an Oriental weapon. The sword was the emblem of Roman authority. This authority Christ claimed as his own and challenged Rome and Roman grounds. But it should be noted that Christ moves first against the derelict church and man. There were compromisers in Pergamos, followers of Balaam and the Nicolaitans. Balaam, Numbers chapter 24 to 25 and chapter 31, led Israel through Balak into idolatry and fornication, into corruption as a means of overcoming faith rather than direct assault. These men were, in effect, accomplishing the same thing, seeking to merge the church and the world, to soften or eliminate the offence of the cross, and to make common cause with Rome in man's religious quest. Their primary sin was spiritual, and the consequences were apparent in the realm of morality. But men cannot commit Christ to compromise, however much they may commit institutions to compromise, and the outcome of their compromise is not peace, but war with Christ himself. Chapter 2, verse 16. A twofold promise, chapter 2, verse 17, is given to those who overcome. 1. The hidden manna, supernatural sustenance, provision and deliverance will characterize their daily life. Their endurance and success will be hidden from the world as to its cause, but not in its effects. 2. A white stone, and in the stone a new name written, which no man knoweth, saving he that receiveth it. The white stone had a variety of meanings in the empire. It was usually a cube or a rectangular block of stone or ivory. It was a symbol of victory, also of acquittal, again also a free ticket to food and entertainment. These and other meanings are all suggested by the usage here. The new name, again, was understood in the empire as having reference to the emperor and his title on assumption of power. With Antipas, who was called by Christ, my faithful martyr, Jesus Christ gave him nothing less than his own title. In Revelation chapter 1, verse 5, Jesus Christ himself is called a faithful martyrs, and that is the very title he gave to Antipas. Thus, the imperial name of Christ is given to the triumphant believer, and is his symbol of victory and token of entrance into the true realm of man, God's kingdom. This victory is hidden from others in that, in its essence, it is in terms of the relationship of the heart of man to his Lord, but it will be apparent in the integrity of his witness and the faithfulness of his stand against the kingdom of man. It should be noted that these letters are summons to battle, not only in their technically military terminology, but also in their outright declaration of hatred and war on both the enemy and the compromiser. David could declare, "Blessed be the Lord my strength, which teacheth my hands to war and my fingers to fight." Psalm 104 verse 1, compare also Psalm 18 verse 34. War and conflict in any sense are both a product of a fallen world and a necessity therein. The capacity to fight is lost where meaning is lost, where evil becomes simply another facet of reality or is relativized. As Robert Rendell has observed, why repudiate evil if it be but part of ultimate reality? Rome had, by its faith, retreated from that basic war and was capable only of opposing those who disturbed its orderly death with hints of life. If evil is as ultimate as righteousness, then death is as ultimate as life, and possibly more basic, since more prevalent. Stoicism was soon to affirm this reign of death, and suicide became almost a virtue. The Church's basic struggle, therefore, was to be with herself. The letters are written with this in mind. Today, as then, good and evil, life and death, all things indeed, are equally ultimate for man, who thus stands increasingly unmanned by any hint of war. What can he war against, and where is his enemy? The modern post-Darwinian outlook is increasingly incapable of making any war other than total war against all things. Either everything is condoned or all things savagely despised and stomped underfoot. The outcome, in either event, is death. The Church's basic struggle is again with herself and against compromise. When men equalize good and evil, they hope with Adam to open up greater freedom to man and to make life richer in its possibilities and actualities. But relativization is a two-edged sword. Life, instead of becoming richer by the overthrow of moral law, is degraded thereby to the same level as death, and no better. Nietzsche saw the consequences of this vaunted freedom and collapsed under its burden. Dewey could not explain why, having relativized all things, democracy should be held to have any especial value, or man's freedom and dignity should be prized. The anarchy of values leads only to the frenzied hatred of and war against all reality, because reality has become the epitome of darkness by its equalizing absorption of all meanings. In this sorry equalization, the theology of the modern Church has had no small share. The progressive religious skepticism of the Roman Empire did not abate its religious nature, but rather intensified it. Man always insists on and seeks salvation, if not from God, then from the state or some other agency which he divinizes. The secularization of contemporary life is characterized by the rise of the state as the messianic order. The frenzy of religious revivals and experiences has given way to political fervor and revolution. The naive fervor of many earlier student religious movements has been succeeded by the passion of political radicalism, a passion in the religious sense, in that substitution, vicarious atonement, and intellectual stigmata are hallmarks of the student devotee, whose capacity for capable and systematically positive action is as limited as his need for dramatization is great. Salvation is definitely the order of the day, and the state is the new god and juggernaut of secular and autonomous man.